these guys are still.
Thank
rolling
you.
with things.
Oh,
They just came in with a huge proposal in Wheaton. You know, Wheaton Stick Districts, you know, for a 7-story apartment building. So these guys are still saying, yeah, marketable, marketable, marketable. So, you know, we'll see what happens. Yeah. I'm just a cynic about everything now. Which is not a good thing. So we need some optimism with elected officials.
Bill in my church, 60 euros. So something I saw.
All right, I have 7 p.m. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's a little bit louder than it used to be. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, apparently the microphones got tuned because that's a lot louder to me. But anyway, could we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Pileski.
Here.
Trustee Berkshire.
Here.
Trustee Delapenna.
Here.
Trustee Domke.
Here.
Trustee Lanisa. Trustee Prokowski.
Here.
And Trustee Trejo.
Here.
Right, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Do I have a motion to approve the prepared agenda?
So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion carries. We'll now move to Village Board public comment. Anyone wishing to provide a comment on a topic or an agenda item may address the Village Board during this time by submitting comments in advance using our online form or during the meeting. Madam Clerk, do we receive any comments in advance?
I have 2 for items later in the agenda. We can read those at the second half of the meeting. If you'd like.
Perfect. And that would be under new business. Do we have any members of the public here tonight that'd like to make a comment? Sure, Terry, come on up.
First of all, Roselle Centennial. How about the city? Bridge where Irving Park goes under the tracks, both sides have a lot of. Local residents to help.
Lower it
Pull
down.
it down.
Push it down.
Pull it down.
There you go.
You want me to start over?
No, you're good.
I'm sorry. Remember, the only impression that Metro passengers get of Roselle is what they see from the train. My second comment. At the 2/14/2022 board meeting, I submitted a public comment about the path between the Maple Avenue parking lot and Len's Ace Hardware being a public path sidewalk blocked by snow plowed onto it. Since that comment, I have been told this is not a public path, as has been stated to me in the past. Therefore, I want to make a public apology to both the board and the residents for my inaccurate statements. I believe in honesty. I personally feel that an apology is appropriate action for this, and thus I am doing so. This situation again reveals why communications is a very important tool. So I apologize for my comments that I thought were true, which proved to not be. Speaking of communications, I learned the hard way last week that even trying to hand deliver a document to Roselle City leaders is difficult to accomplish. This further limits me in my efforts. This further limits me as my emails get blocked by spam filters and most of my voicemails are never acknowledged or returned. So I am confused as to how I am supposed to do business with the city leaders now, except for in this manner. The document was another attempt to get the sidewalk blockage removed from the Metro 19 site at Lawrence near Cherry. During the time the board was approving Metro 19 last year, I pleaded that sidewalk access would not be impacted unnecessarily, as this is too often done during construction. I was told by several people that it would not be a problem, but it has been. The fencing base along Lawrence Avenue overlaps the sidewalk, creating a trip hazard. And at 2 points, the fence blocks the entire sidewalk. This has been in place for over 2 months now, and it seems to only be getting worse. As of 2 p.m. today, when I walked by the site to verify the fencing was still in place, the gates to the driveways were opened, blocking the sidewalks completely. In January, my voicemails to code enforcement never got me a return call nor the sidewalk access restored. So I created a document to hand deliver in hopes it would get some action. A week ago Friday, I hand delivered this to another person to have that delivered to them. And as of last Tuesday, it had not been, but it was in my presence only after I mentioned that this had not been had occurred before, and I had never gotten an acknowledgement of that document. So much for all the time city employees have assured me that they care so much about pedestrians and ADA enforcement. I am overly concerned now because soon the annual street and sidewalk repair program will start. Typically, this results in many sidewalk sections being demolished, and then they stay that way until the crews complete other sites and then get back to them, often for weeks. Sidewalks should not be torn up unless they can be restored that week. And there must be a clear alternative access around the site. I urge all residents to report all long-term access blockages so that the city can be aware of them. But I will be monitoring this also. Construction companies must adhere to city ordinances and ADA rules. If their permits allow them to block sidewalks, these permits should be changed. Unnecessary blockages of sidewalks should not be tolerated. My final comment: pedestrians, sidewalks, and crosswalks matter. So I offer an educational opportunity to our city leaders. Let's set up a 2-hour walking tour of the area in and near downtown Roselle. I can show you just a few of the over 36 situations which impact pedestrian access and/or safety. Maybe once you walk in my shoes, of course not literally, you will then understand how serious these issues really are and then give them some attention. Many of the items on the tour would be things the city has jurisdiction over and could take action to solve just simply by enforcing existing city ordinances. A few would be items that IDOT would be responsible for, but the city could start supporting my efforts to work with them instead of resisting efforts or just ignoring the problem. If the city can join a fight, if the city can join a group to fight a train company merger, they should be able to use the same process to encourage IDOT to improve access and safety within Roselle. So if the mayor, city administrator, code enforcer, chief of police, and any trustees would agree to do this, let's set a date as soon as we can. to learn what's going on. Others could join in as desired. The best way to know what is really going on is to experience it personally. Is anybody willing to learn? Thank you very much.
Do we have anyone else in the audience today who has the public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on with our officials and staff reports. So tonight I do not have any official reports. Does any village trustee have any official reports? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to village clerk.
No report.
All right, village attorney,
No report, Mr. Mayor.
village administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just looking for direction from the village board on whether or not it wants to extend or approve a new one-year intergovernmental and parking lease or parking license agreement with the Roselle Public Library. This April of last year, the board approved one valid for a year, which license fee of $4,000, and in return, public parking is allowed in the library surface parking lot for all hours after they close Monday through Sunday with no overnight parking allowed. And just want to make sure if the board concurs with renewing it, I would put it on an upcoming agenda as their board has recently spoken about it and support renewing it on their end.
No other terms have changed?
Identical terms, no other terms changed.
Be fine with that.
I'm okay. I
All
just
right.
do have a question. Mr.
Yeah.
Mayor. I was just curious on the usage. 'Cause I mean,
Anecdotally, I think it hasn't hurt. I know I've heard at least from one downtown restaurant owner who likes to be able to direct customers to an available parking lot. Apart from that, we have not done any true kind of measuring of parking.
I think it's to our advantage at least to renew it for 1 year. And I think with COVID subsiding, we can kind of evaluate
yeah,
that more.
I wasn't going to disagree with you. I was just curious on that because, yeah, we had some weird years, but maybe something we can take a look at.
Perfect. All right, there's your direction. Anything else? All right, thank you. We'll move on to unfinished business. First, we have the consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine, procedural, informational, self-explanatory, or non-controversial in nature. These will be enacted in one motion. There will be no discussion of these items. Tonight, we have presentation approval of the village board minutes from February 28th, 2022, and adopt a resolution to close the state highway for the purpose of holding an annual parade. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Seeing none, that motion carries. Moving on to our agenda, we don't have anything under community development administration. Trustee Pierakowski.
Yes, I would like to move approval of the purchase of Envisio strategic planning software in the amount of $27,500 and authorize the village administrator to sign a master license agreement.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Seeing none, that motion carries. Fire, trustee Trejo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution affirming the purchase of a towing fire engine from Dinges Fire Company of Amboy, Illinois, in the amount of $688,067.98, subject to purchase contract approval by the village attorney.
Your second?
Second.
Any discussion? We gonna get this anytime soon?
Sometime soon.
Delivery of that is approximately 15 months. So ordered this month, we're anticipated June of 2023.
And that's
So,
a 20-year life, right, chief? 20-year
Yes.
life?
yes.
And if we round it up by the 2 cents, will we maybe get a little faster?
Well, so the one thing I would like to throw out to the board is one of the options is obviously the purchase price, 688,000. They do have a prepay option of 100% prepay, which would discount the purchase by 18,000. If we choose to go that route, I would highly recommend a performance bond, which would be 1% of the purchase cost, which is 6,900 roughly. So our total savings would be 11,125. So just looking for a direction from the board if they would like to go with a prepay or just wait for payment after we receive the vehicle. So
And there should be a good trade-in allowance on the old vehicle, right?
we anticipate, originally we were anticipating that trade-in to be into the $20,000 range. With the cost of vehicles going up, we're seeing obviously the increase in the demand for used vehicles. So we aren't sure what it's going to be a year and a half from now, but we would anticipate that it would be substantially more than what our original estimate was.
I was gonna say, I think that's a great idea about saving the money, but I think we need to talk with Tom and go through a cash flow analysis as to coming up with that kind of money at this time without taking a look at what it affects and everything else. So I would say we need to analyze it before we make a decision like that.
Yeah, I agree. So we'll ensure that I think finance and you can work through that for us. So any other discussion before we move to a vote? All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Seeing none, that motion carries. We have nothing under police tonight, so Public Works, trustee Donkey.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution committing the local match to the Invest in Cook funding opportunity for the Roselle Road pedestrian improvements preliminary engineering in the amount of $65,000.
Second.
Any discussion? And Kristen, do you want to just give a brief summary? I know we just prepared the letter today.
Yes, so we have identified several areas along Roselle Road from Devon up to Nergy where there are either gaps in the sidewalk or a sidewalk at intersections that aren't ADA compliant, as well as there's no formal crossing at either of the ramps at 390. So this would address that. It would also look into pedestrian access across Roselle Road at Devon, where we've heard comments before from residents about that intersection as well. So what is being asked right now is just for preliminary engineering to do that design that would get us in a place to do final design and construction at a later date. But if we get this done, then it puts us at an advantage for other grant opportunities in the future.
Great, thank you, and appreciate staff's proactiveness about trying to put us in a good position for grants. So any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? That motion carries. Finance, trustee Lanisa.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the accounts payable list for March 14th, 2022 in the amount of $978,481.46.
Is there a second? Thank you. Any discussion? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Do you mind going to the microphone though, just so that way those online, is it relevant to the accounts payable list or? Could we address that under the next public, if that's okay? Any discussion on the bills list? All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Yes, abstain.
Okay, any, all those opposed, nay, any abstentions? Trustee Donkey, and that motion carries. So now we'll move to new business. And so now we'll do public comment. So if you want to ask that first, and then we'll skip to and then we'll go to the others that were submitted ahead of time, but thank you.
Hi, and my question just says, with the expense of 688,000, is there a bid requirement where there's 3 bids that are usually submitted? How would a type of expense like that work?
Yeah, I guess we'll start with Tom, if you want to address the bidding, and then I think we can go to the chief to discuss maybe the specifics regarding the truck.
So that the fire engine was, specs were created by a committee in the fire department. And then an RFP, or request for proposals, was put out. So they sent that to Mark, I believe it was 15 manufacturers, and 8 responded to the request for proposals.
That's correct.
And I know bidding has varied on certain projects. So some we get a good response like this, others sometimes we only get 1 or 2. So.
And usually it's construction projects that are bid, and this is a piece of equipment. So that's why we did a request for a proposal.
And this was the lowest bid, right?
Yeah, it was yes, I believe it was the lowest price.
You can see it on our sheet here. That was the lowest of the 8.
Madam Clerk, any other? So I think Greg and Tiffany, if you want to come back up. For. Yep. Yep, absolutely. Okay, sounds good. And then we did have one received in advance, so we'll read that into the record.
This comment is from Dave. Last name, Dave Strakowski and Jacqueline King. They write, "Dear village leaders of Roselle, my wife and I will be unable to attend the village board meeting on Monday in person because we have a newborn to care for. But we wanted to make a couple of comments concerning the possible development of this area. We will be tuning into the Village of Roselle YouTube stream on Monday, March 14th at 7 p.m. We have many concerns related to the development of this parcel. Those concerns relating to flooding, economic benefit to the community, traffic, environment, aesthetics, noise, light, safety, etc. We would like to highlight a few of these concerns as this process begins again in an attempt for the village to develop this property. One of our biggest concerns is how development of any kind on this parcel will affect flooding in the neighborhood. Flooding is already a problem in this area, even with the current mitigations in place. We have photos that show how flooded this area became during a significant rainstorm last year, which are becoming more of a regular occurrence. We feel this will put roads and homes underwater even further if this area is developed and more rain and runoff has nowhere to go. Item 2, use of this space for a mixed-use office/retail first floor with residential second, third floors in an economic environment where occupying physical office or retail space is becoming a thing of the past, especially in a post-pandemic world. Roselle already has enough empty retail/office space as it is. Example, right across the street from this proposed development, the northeast corner of Nergy Road and Roselle Road, and elsewhere within the village. Before development of more office retail space is even considered anywhere within the village should focus on occupying the existing retail and office space locations that exist around the village of Roselle before we have another vacant one. We will refrain from going into detail on the other concerns for now, but please know that the following concerns also share great importance to us and the residents of this area, and these are in no particular order of importance. Traffic, environment, aesthetics, noise, light, and safety. Personally, we are not completely against the development of this area as long as it blends well into the subdivision and does not cause any undue burden to the residents that live there. When David Pileski was running for office, we reached out to him directly to hear his thoughts on the possibility of future development of this parcel. We voted for him in part because we felt his thoughts surrounding the possible development of this parcel were the most logical compared to mayors of the past. That any proposed development of this parcel would be respectfully and properly communicated to the surrounding neighbors, and that he would genuinely listen to the suggestions and concerns of the surrounding neighborhood related to this proposed development. We look forward to being a part of the conversation as this process moves forward. Please feel free to reach out to us in the future regarding the proposed development of this parcel of land. We love to continue to share our thoughts. Sincerely, David Strakowski and Jacqueline King.
Thank you. I think most of this we'll get into when we get to the next agenda item, but on the vacancy rates, Matt, can you just provide kind of an update? I know we did some research into that, but also you've been following that as you've moved into your role for economic development purposes.
Yes, to address the northeast Nergy and Roselle, that shopping center is actually pretty full. I believe it only had one vacancy when I visited there today. And also the other retail center on the east side of Roselle Road across from this site is completely full, along with an office space there that is also at capacity.
Okay, thank you so much. Any other members of the public wish to give a comment before we go into our agenda items? All right, seeing none, then Matt, don't get too comfortable. Let's go into the redevelopment discussion for 1828 South Roselle Road.
Yes, so this property is village owned. It's about 6.5 acres. Staff has been advertising this for development since we went out for RFQ in 2021. And did not receive any inquiries that were acceptable at that time. We've continued to market this, and most recently, earlier this year, we were approached by 2 developers with the ideas of a mixed-use concept. So we started a statement of interest process to get their intent and seriousness to see who really wanted to develop in it. We received 1 statement of interest with that mixed-use concept of about 100 units and first floor retail and commercial. The next step in this process would be to enter into a letter of intent, which would provide the developer exclusive access to the land to do studies for feasibility. At this time, the village would also conduct a wetland study to see what portion of that land could be developed. Right now, without that information, we really can't say how large of a development could be sustained on this site. So this next step would be that fact-finding piece to see if this site is suitable to be developed. So I'm asking the board for direction on whether they would like to proceed to the letter of intent with the developer to conduct the wetlands study and receive concept plans for this site from the developer.
Before I open up to comments, I think the one thing that we've always struggled with is there's a lot of wetlands here. We just don't know how much. And I think at the end of the day, we own the lot. I know this is a different approach than we've considered in the past, but we have TIF increment there. And I think to spend this money, at least we know if this is even something that's possible. And if it's not, we can move on and repurpose this slot in a way that it's probably more aligned to, which may be recreation or something else. But without this wetland study, any developer's going to look at this and give us a pie in the sky proposal. We're not going to get a reality check in anyone. So
One way or the other, we need to find out.
So with that being the case, though, any comments or questions from the board for staff?
So
Wayne?
I know you alluded to the last interested party that did a study, but we didn't get any of the data from their study.
Correct. You're referring to the Green Dot developers. They proposed a hotel in 2018.
We didn't get any wetland study on that or anything like that.
No, we didn't receive anything from their from that process. So that's why we're proposing the village conduct the wetland study. That way we're the owners of it. And we have access to that information, then we would share that. And that wetland study would be good for 3 years if we conducted it now. So if this development didn't go through, we would still have that information for that time.
Tom?
For that proposed building with 100 units in the mixed use, what estimates do they have for amount of acreage they'll actually need to build on?
So judging from what we know of the wetland right now, it's anticipated that about 3 acres of it could be developable. But again, that there's no solid evidence of that. That's why the wetland study is being conducted.
But you don't know how much they would actually need to build that 100-unit building?
They were estimating that 3 acres.
Okay.
Lee, sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I totally support this. I think it makes sense to do the wetland study, especially given that we didn't get the information. I'm sure it was done by Green Dot, and obviously they don't have to share it with us. I mean, they paid for it, so I think it makes sense for us to do that.
Wayne?
Sounds like the neighbors want to be part of this process. And I didn't see anything in any of our statements that said they wouldn't be. So, moving forward, even in their reading today, they're not against the development. They just want it to be appropriately sized for their area. And I think pretty much this entire board, and certainly our mayor, believes the same thing. So I don't think we it's nice to be reminded of who we are and what we're doing, but they're not out of the mix, I don't think, David, right?
Correct. No, if the board's direction would be to move forward with the letter of intent, we would do the same thing that we've done in the past where we'd notify the neighbors, and I would make a point to personally reach out to those that we've gotten their contact information from the prior years of looking at Green Dot. And I think the key thing to stress is a letter of intent does not guarantee development. It just takes the property off the public market for the time and period that we're looking at so that we can do our research, they can do the research. They would still have to apply for permits, still have to apply for a development. It's just simply kind of, we're going steady until we're ready to decide if we want to settle down with each other or not. So.
Long, short, we're gonna do a bunch of analysis and we'll come back with data before we have any kind of decision. So I'm completely for it because otherwise we're just shooting in the dark.
Yep, absolutely. Any other?
I agree with everything that I said.
Great, absolutely. So, sorry, Tiffany. If you would like to make a comment now, absolutely. If you have a question or whatnot.
Why not?
If you'd come up just so that way everyone at home can hear you.
We live in that area off of Logan Street by Arthur. And I guess the sound of 100-unit building sounds very unappealing. You know, we moved in there, we've lived there for about 15 years, and I kind of was driving around that area today. There's a lot of houses that back up to there that are used to seeing a serene setting of wetland. So putting an apartment or condos, 100 units, maybe it's 3-4 stories. Does it sound very appealing? And even if we're standing in our second stories, everyone's in their bedrooms looking out, they'll be able to see whoever is looking back at them, which you're not seeing now. I guess outside traffic is concern. Strangers coming into the neighborhood. It's right off of off the 390, which is easy access on and off for people to come on and off, especially when originally it was looked up to develop as a hotel. I know there's a lot of risks with that, people coming and going, hard to track them if someone's kid ends up missing or whatnot. So safety concerns, a degraded view, you know, it could be the back of buildings, it could be dumpsters, there could be rats. The other thing is, I think in that letter you mentioned, or they mentioned water issues. So in our subdivision, I don't know if anybody else lives in that area, there are a lot of water issues, and there's a lot of properties that have well and septic. So we don't have well and septic, but we back up to somebody who does, and we get a lot of water in our yard, and it's from the well and septic. So that probably would need to be looked into as well, because there's a bunch of properties around there that have well and septics that flood. That's, you know, a sanitary concern. So those are just some of the things that come to mind. And I know the letter that you had read for somebody else who wrote, I mean, those are some of the additional concerns that I would have as well. When you mentioned doing a wetland study and you mentioned maybe doing a recreational area, that sounds really good. So those are just some of the concerns living in the area that I have.
No, thank you so much for sharing that with us. So I do know, I wish we could get rid of well and septic, but unfortunately those are unincorporated individuals. So if they would love to join the village, we'd love to talk to them. I know we have an annexation group that's working to kind of streamline some processes. So no pressure, Bruce or Cheryl, about your meeting tomorrow to solve all of our problems. We hear a lot of comments around stormwater issues in that neighborhood, and I just want to give Public Works a chance to discuss kind of a study that we're working on kicking off for that area.
Yeah, so within the next 2 months, the village board should be seeing a recommendation to award a contract for a concept study for improvements of that area, the Meacham Creek area. So it's basically area north of Irving Park, on out, basically up to 390 and then to the east. So it would include this area as well. So it would definitely be addressed as part of that.
And I know that's something that when we get the study, it's going to take us years to work through that because a lot of that stuff costs a lot of money. But I think we're investing money to make sure that we can dot our I's and cross our T's to understand where those problems are and what's going to be the best solution for the long term, because we do recognize storms are creating larger surges. Trustee Berkshire.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to reiterate the fact that we've gone down this road since 2018 and even probably before that. We started with a hotel, we started with the senior center. So all of these ideas are just ideas at this moment. And this developer could fall flat just like the other developer who thought we were going to be putting up multi-unit hotels. So it's just a matter of understanding what the property is going to be used for and what can be used in this. And then, you know, unfortunately, it is a developable piece of property. And if we come to find out that it's got a lot of value, we'll do so. If not, if we find out it's a lot of wetland, which is what we also want to go to study, then we might turn into something different. But at this present moment, it is speculative at best until we get all this analysis. So I just wanted to make sure we reiterate that.
Yeah, so I think direction from the board is to move forward with the letter of intent and to pull together the wetland study for us to approve.
Yes.
Sorry, sir. Greg, did you want to say something else? Sorry.
Yeah, just a point of clarification.
Yeah.
In between the houses, the rows of houses in that neighborhood, like between Logan and the next one behind us is Seward. There's just not drains in between the houses from backyard to backyard. So
Okay.
water has nowhere to go, and the water from residents will sometimes mix with, like Tiffany said, well and septic, and you get the smell. We've had a Cook County inspector come out too, just to do some tests of the area.
Okay.
I just pointing it out from
Yeah.
a public works perspective, it would be great to follow
I
up.
was going to say, if you don't mind, can you give your contact information? I know we've got your address, but if there's anything like an email address and something like that, we can have Public Works.
Yeah, it sounds like Public Works is already on it, so it'd be great to connect.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So with that, staff has direction to bring that forward for the March 20th meeting, and we can engage to do some neighborhood notifications on.
Based on the dollar of the 5,500, I can certainly get that moving now. It's within my purchase authority. If the board is okay, would
Any
be
objection to that?
2 weeks, and
Let's get the
then we'll
study
bring
going.
back the letter of intent. Certainly requires village board approval if you're okay. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. So next on the agenda is actually myself. So regarding the Rose Parade budget, I know this becomes a hot topic from year to year. One thing that came up, obviously, we're seeing it with every commodity in the world right now. Costs have gone up for the Rose Parade to be hosted. So the chamber was able, and you have a copy of this to provide a itemized budget to kind of show what their expenses are looking like for this year. And so we did preview this with the Centennial Commission. They wanted the board to review it since this has been a typical village traditional thing that we have funded in the past. I wanted to get consensus of the board about increasing their allocation. I think there's definitely certainly a need to do that in some cases. I would argue if you look at the second half, there's a couple items here where I don't feel comfortable putting taxpayer dollars to buy volunteer t-shirts, snacks, and just the kind of general admin that's at $1,900, I feel a little bit uncomfortable because that's a little bit generic and broad to me. But I think if you factor out, essentially that's about $2,500, it brings you down to about $4,500. I think that's an appropriate addition if we want to factor that in for this year and potentially for next year. Just given rising costs and whatnot, I see no reason. And we do have an itemized list to actually scrutinize this year. So I felt comfortable bringing this to the board. So whatever you want to do, don't shoot the messenger. So open to discussion.
I'm fine with that.
So you're talking about $4,500?
Correct, giving them an additional $4,500. So taking out the snacks, T-shirts, and the admin printing.
And the
Seems fair
Wienermobile,
to me.
and the Wienermobile, that's out.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the Wienermobile is free, so, but I don't know. They didn't list the price for the Wienermobile. I thought it was very interesting to see. I don't want us to get into scrutinizing who they select. If you have a feeling about that, talk to the chamber or volunteer and be a chamber member. They do run the event, so I don't want to micromanage, but I think it was very fair and nice of them to open up the books a little bit because I feel like it's been a little bit of a mysterious allocation in prior years. So
Agree, and I do think what you're proposing is a valid thing for us to offer.
okay. Everyone else good? All right, then we'll prepare the proper documentation, increase it by 4,500, and we'll let the chamber know.
Unless the trustees want to do tumbling.
No, I want to drive the Wienermobile, but that's, I'll leave that out.
The Wayne Domke tumblers, featuring Wayne Domke.
I'd pay money to see that.
Yeah, we'll pay for the Rose Parade.
Well, it'll be more like the falling down the street.
We're gonna need a bigger
Rolling
insurance
down the street.
deductible, I think. Any other business for the board to discuss tonight? All right, can I have I want to make sure I'm looking to the attorney. Do we want to adjourn this meeting first and then convene executive session or vice versa? I get myself turned around on this.
There's not gonna be any final action.
No, there's no final
Okay,
action.
so as long as there's no final action, you can adjourn this meeting. Go to-
Perfect. So can I have a motion to enter into executive session
So moved.
to discuss personnel?
Second.
All right, no final action is intended to be taken. All the, roll call, please.
Trustee Delmena.
Aye.
Trustee Trejo.
Aye.
Trustee Berkshire.
Yes.
Trustee Prokowski.
Aye.
Trustee Dom.
Aye.
For purposes of the record, the purpose of the executive session is to discuss personnel in the community development department.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then could I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Yes.
Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? This meeting is adjourned at 7:41. Thank you so much to the public for coming out.